My name is Ana Negrón, and I'm a published author.
That's huge.
Besides that, I'm a board-certified family physician. I've been in practice for over 40 years. I teach family medicine to residents who I want to introduce to use food as prevention and the treatment of chronic illnesses. I volunteer here at the clinic in Phoenixville. I've been doing this since 2008. I cook with my patients. I've been doing that since 2003. And I have a private practice where I transition people to healthier diets so that they can really experience the positive science of food, which is the subtitle to the book. Each one of you has a little bookmark as a present. You'll get one too, Jill.
That's what I came for.
That's
right.
I'll sign it for you.
That's right.
I think what I will do is first tell you, how this book came about. I mean, I never really wanted to write a book. People said, you should write a book, you should write a book. And I said, I'm living my book. I'm living my book. But then one day, after preparing materials for a website, which my son helped me set up, and really labor-intensive, one-on-one with my patients and teaching, I decided that I really wanted the book to stand by itself and go out into the world without me. And that came together with this feeling that I had to write it. And so apparently I had to, because I would wake up at 4 in the morning, gung ho to write. And it became effortless. I wrote and wrote and wrote for a year and a half. I would take some days off, but it was like I had unlike a novel where you know the ending before you start writing, from what I'm told, I had no idea where this was going. So I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and when I thought I was finished, I wrote some more. I really, really wanted to empty myself of everything. I wanted to put everything in this book. And then it became the task of, I didn't talk to any publishers at this time because I didn't know really that I could pull this off. After I had written, 300 pages, I would spread them out and start to look at how they would be, one would follow the next, and how I could really string them and make it so that somebody picking up the book would know what it was about. Because one thing is what you inhabit, the ideas that inhabit your head, and another thing is really making it intelligible so that someone can really follow your trend of thought. Or preambles. I was really bad at preambles. I realized that, so I would start in the middle of a thought, and so the task of really creating an introduction to the chapter, an introduction to the paragraph, a link from this to that. And so, as a scientist and having never taken any writing classes, this became my steep learning curve. After I had it all done, then I started submitting to publishers. And I was very lucky that even though I submitted to maybe 25, 30 publishers, and I heard from some that, no, this is not what we're looking for, good. And some said, you're covering too much, and I said, well, that's your opinion. And then January of this year, Sunstone Press from Santa Fe, New Mexico, called and said, we'd like to drop everything and work on this book. Send us some more. And so I sent them some more, and in June the book was published. They did no editing, except for protecting me a couple of times when I talked about this or that person or industry in a bad light. I said, you should not do this. Other than that, this is all my word, and I'm so happy and so proud of it. Then, of course, they did the beautiful, they're all my photos, including my including the back one. I really, really didn't want to give this to anybody. I can't believe it. The photographs inside are also all in my kitchen before I ate the stuff. So what they had really, for me, as a wonderful gift was how they, the typesetting, the colors, the indentations, and all of that. But even the tables, I said, no, these tables have to go this form, these tables have to go that form. Where do the photographs go? So I really wish this kind of publisher to any author who feels they can, I mean, they were so responsive. Jim Smith and his crew were just terrific. Only 3 people. Every time I called, they would pick up the phone. I never had any problems.
A human being.
A human being every time. No emails, just call us. So what I'd like to do today is just read some excerpts from the book. And it was really hard to, it is hard not knowing who you are. But I will start with a few things. First of all, being a nonfiction book, right? It's medicine, but it's also social. It's about how to transition to a healthier diet, but taking into account the social ripples, you know, the other people that you live with. How do you make habits and exchange old habits for new habits? It's about history also, and politics, and the U.S. dietary guidelines, and it's about how we create food banks in our community for those that don't have the same means that we do. So I have examples of a food bank that would be more nourishing, as opposed to just the regular, you know, big macaroni and cheese, you know, just to fill people's bellies. Just be more nourishing. I also, because I am a sustainable person and an ethical vegan for 27 years, you know, sustainability to me is really important, and so composting has a chapter. And how to really start seeds as just a way to engage children in food literacy, not as a how-to, but really how to include children in the kitchen, not just set the table and clear the table, but really in the curiosity of cooking. It's also calcium and protein and the myths about carbohydrates. It is about medical conditions that are very prevalent in Western societies and not so much in plant eating cultures. And it's about, and it also has case studies from my own practice. So there are 20-some people that have graced the end of the book without their names, of course. It's written really, really as an antidote to our reliance on drugs and medications for our chronic illnesses. So in the epilogue, I thank the pharmaceutical relationship that we've had with them, but I also caution us to really remember that it's insidious, the way that we really remember brand names and associate conditions with drugs which are fabricated by our lifestyle, and that we could really address by changing our lifestyle. Having said that, I mean, the people that I see in my practice I give them the full picture of what could happen if they made a transition to a healthier diet, but then I work with them where they are. So this is really hopefully readable for anyone, not just for those who are there already. We have a long experience and fine tradition in surviving adversity. We now face the task for which you have little experience, the task of surviving prosperity. today we have not really diseases of deprivation, but diseases of excess. And this is the hardest thing because it's not sophisticated. I don't sell anything but my book, and you can borrow it from the library. You can get it on Kindle. You can borrow it from somebody else. I don't deal with supplements or hair snips or saliva samples. It's really a nourishment assessment based on what you have at home in your food bank, and then how it can be better balanced. So we do not really suffer from deprivation. There's only 2% of the population in this country that's underweight, whereas the percent of the people who are overweight. However, overweight people get hungry too, and we really must address that hunger feeling and how to really address it. A lot of times when I deal with my patients, hunger is for something else and not really for food. And I was prepared, but not so well prepared to deal with that aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it, because we're often hungry for a change, because we're bored, hungry for love, acceptance, money, vacation, free time, a hug, and all of this is in some way addressed in this book. So as you see, I am empty. I put everything in here. After I send the book to the publishers, I sent manuscripts to people who have crossed paths with my life from way back when, and I am very, very fortunate to have lots of advanced praise in the beginning of the book, which I said it's all got to be in here because those people really, really helped to make me who I am today. It's from teachers, from principals, from mentors, physicians, farmers, journalists, from all walks of life, writers, educators. Let me start with just a few readings. This is from the beginning, Experience the Positive Science of Food. For a growing number of you, this chapter is a refresher course affirming the wellness practices of good nourishment, exercise, meditation, and self-expression. For others, the weeks ahead, because I'm hoping that you go on to the weeks ahead, could chart a new direction, the new direction you are longing for, the new path you are ready to take. Perhaps this time the challenge is to stay on your wellness practice for longer than ever before, even for life. The vast majority of chronic diseases which plague our developed world are not external attacks, but the result of not regularly tending to our health and well-being. We've exposed the body to an excess of processed and animal foods and not enough to whole foods for the body to thrive. We can take this back. If you've been on a frequent dose of chicken, bread, cheese, fish, juice, boxed cereals, pizza, fritters, sweets, and takeout, it is likely that you're also on medicines for conditions such as arthritis, pain, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, sexual dysfunction, acid reflux, allergies, asthma, depression, irritable bowel, and constipation. This is how my patients come every week. The above foods produce inflammation, make our body viscous, raise blood pressure, and elevate blood lipids. The body suffers with increased fat stores, insulin resistance, and foods that stimulate uncontrolled cell division. Deep inside, we already know this. If you could, be still for a couple of minutes and tune into your body. Hear its constant hum, heart pumping, hair growing, gastric juices pouring into the stomach, cuts and bruises healing, nourishment from the latest meal being absorbed into the bloodstream, insulin carrying sugar into muscles and brain, excess fat being removed from inside arteries, inside the liver, and underneath your skin. inflammation turning on and off appropriately, dying red blood cells replaced by new ones, bacteria being zapped, rogue cancer cells biting the dust. Feel intestines pushing their load, oxygenation and pH carefully monitored. You sense not just the temperature, but also the atmosphere and the mood in the room. Marvel that you are, you've come this far. Relax, let go of stress, and stay alert. So throughout this writing, I am engaging with you, the reader, in sort of like thinking about, this is not just a dry manual. This is really how to prepare ourselves to become the change we want and we long. My practice is called Practice Wellness Beyond a Wish. I go on, I continue this with really what sets up the change, which is start with 6 weeks. And yesterday I had some people ask me, well, what if I don't have 6 weeks as a stretch to do it? Because I suggest that you do 6 weeks without interruption, that it really 100%, even if you decide not to do it forever, but the 6 weeks, 100% will give you an experience, a true personal experience. But you don't have to do 6 weeks at a time, because it's only in page 3 or 4 of this Start with 6 Weeks where I really go into day 1. The beginning is like a foreplay or a preamble. It's really like, think about it. Put it on the calendar. What do you think? Practice, how would you have success? We've all had to plan for a party, and you know how we just turn it in our heads and say, by when do I need to call so-and-so? When do I need to buy such ingredients? So the preparation for me in writing this section was really important, because a lot of people jump into something without really preparing themselves, and it just flops very often. And then they say, I tried it and it didn't work. So I'll just read you a couple of paragraphs from this section. Although this chapter makes the case for transitioning to a healthier lifestyle, it introduces it as a plan to be tried for 6 weeks, with the option of extending it to 3 months, 6 years, a year, and beyond. Americans waste billions of dollars a year on diets. I say waste because most people do not keep their weight off after the diet, so they may repeat the same one again or try a new one. On the other hand, people who transition to a healthier lifestyle waste less money and often manage to stick with it. Eating nourishing plant foods will help you lose excess weight and restores health to its fullest potential. However, your new habits must stand in stark contrast with your old ones. Wimpy efforts don't pay off and will leave you disappointed. The changes here suggested are profound. Test this lifestyle for a minimum of 6 weeks. Plan to eliminate culprit foods. Do not play mind games by reducing them. Even if you don't plan to keep going beyond 6 weeks, give this experiment your all. Be living proof that when you treat your body well, it will go the distance. After 6 weeks, you could choose either to live a healthier life or go back. But your choice will be based on true personal experience. Many symptoms such as acid reflux, joint aches, bloating, and trouble sleeping will go away early on. But in 6 weeks, you will significantly improve health parameters such as blood pressure, blood sugar, and lipids. Prepare for change. This is not a diet. This is the way to reclaim as much lost health as you possibly can. Read on. Imagine how you can positively make it work. So I caution you not to jump in. And I have a pilot. A plan begins with a 10-day pilot, which extends to a minimum of 6 weeks. The pilot is 3 days plus 7. So at each at each one, you iron wrinkles, you revisit it. After the pilot, day 1, week 1, 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. When you do it like this, and there's a revisiting and a revising along the way, you really make yourself more likely to not succeed. I have one exercise that I'm very happy that I put in here and I've been using for a long time. It's called the virtual kitchen tour. You know, you probably are familiar with diet diaries. People who say, well, tell me what you eat and bring me a diet diary. To me, these have really, although I used them when I was a medical student, they really, a few people I was mortified, brought me them. 10 pages of very detailed. They really did not amount to much in terms of usable information. However, the virtual kitchen tour is, you take me on a virtual tour of your kitchen. And to me, that has a lot more substance because that's your food bank. And even if you don't eat every meal at home, that's your default. Whatever you have in your cupboards, in your fridge, in your freezer, is what you're gonna go for. And if it's old and you haven't touched it for a long time, then this is an opportunity to really revisit it and say, why do I keep holding on to this stuff? Without going through that, which takes 5 minutes, and the idea is really you close your eyes and you say what's there today, what's on the counters, on the tabletops, open the fridge, what's on the door, food-wise, shelves, the crispers, the freezer, the pantry, the cupboards, and then we're done. And then together, we're not looking at your diet, but really, we're looking at a third something. It's more objective, and it's not really very personal, because you could say, it's for my grandchildren. These are some questions that I also ask, although not always, that give you more insight, but I wanted to put them in the book because they might give you pause. How often do you cook? Do others in your house also cook? How comfortable, well lit, and uncluttered is your kitchen? How would you describe your cooking space and countertops? How large is your chopping board? Does it need maintenance, such as oiling? What size is your vegetable knife, and how do you sharpen it? You know, I see a generation of people that are completely illiterate in terms of kitchen and how the kitchen is a room, that is the belly of the house. So these questions have revealed many interesting things. What vegetables and leafy greens are in your refrigerator today? How many home-cooked meals are in the freezer right now? What do you offer your guests to eat or to drink? Where and how often do you buy fresh produce? How far is it from your home or office? What can you say about organic foods? How much do you pay for a pound of rice, oats, and beans? Very often we go and we don't even pay attention to it. What do you buy in cans? What condiments do you use? Name your breads: bagel, tortilla, pizza, muffin, pretzels, cookies, crackers. What size container of oil do you buy, and how often do you replenish it? Where do you sit down to eat your meals? What will you have for dinner tonight? Name the places where you go out to eat. What are your favorite items on the menu? And where do you go for takeout? These are things that we do like unconsciously, and it's just a little moment to regroup. Because we're all adults here, but we are responsible for children. I have much to say about children and children's literacy, savvy children. So I'll read you something about young children and adolescents. Is that okay? It's easy to engage children in a project. It is in their nature to be curious. Explain that the family will be learning about new foods, but keep it simple. When out food shopping, give them strips of colored cardboard and ask them to find produce of matching white, green, red, orange, and yellow. When you get home, draw and write the name of the fruit or vegetable on the card, Then read something about it. Invite children into the kitchen. Their little fingers can rip up cabbage leaves, peel garlic and onion, pluck grapes from their stems, push buttons on a blender. Combine food literacy and art. While you cook, let them glue pictures with different colored dry grains and legumes. It's not just for school. We can do it at home too. Sign their names with small seeds such as sesame, poppy, or chia seeds. Find projects within their abilities. They can pit dates and stuff them with pomegranate seeds. Make a fruit tart of sliced fruit pressed on a raw, pasty crust of nuts and dates. Teach them to rinse leafy greens in a bowl of cool water until they feel no more sand at the bottom. Exercise their imagination. Have them collect plant seeds from kitchen fruits and vegetables, then plant them on the ground. Label the spot and see if they germinate. Before soaking beans, spread them on a towel and charge your child with picking out any tooth-cracking pebbles. I keep a collection of them on a tiny shelf in the kitchen. Make sure your kitchen grow up with rich, whole food memories. Children that have these kinds of show and tell kind of stories at school, rather than, we went for pizza or nuggets all the time, are children that have curiosity and develop an appreciation for their bodies and are more interesting people. Older adolescents, they're a tough nut to crack, right? Well, here we are. Teens are busy asserting their independence and forging alliances outside the home. However, as parents, we must expose them, among other things, to nourishing food. It's also our responsibility to teach them how to budget for the day when they go live on their own. Show them these paragraphs. Don't just read them yourselves. Tell them, here, read this. Cash in on the relationship you have with your adolescent. As a member of the family, he or she's already helping with some chores, add cooking to the list. Teach your teen to follow a written recipe all the way to serving the meal. Being able to cook is a skill that will serve him or her for a lifetime. Accept suggestions if you must show disapproval. Do it with respect, never mockery. Let your child come up with a family meal and let him or her prepare it without supervision. Your teen already knows how to call for pizza. Ask her to stop at the grocery store and pick a few items that will expand her food literacy, such as a butternut squash, collards, short brown rice, capers. Don't hold your breath. It may take her forever to come back. Challenge him to bring a bag of chips with less than 20% of the calories from fat. Reading food labels. Or a bag of roasted chestnuts, the only nut that's low in fat, and read about them together. Assign individuals to chop and dice the ingredients in advance. Onions, garlic, red peppers, carrots, napa cabbage, and more for the recipes of that week. As long as the task is finished the night before you plan to cook, let them do it on their own time. Leave the empty containers and written instructions on the counter. The day you cook, fill up the same containers with individual portions for the freezer and the lunchbox. Remember, as adults, we hold the purse. Don't let yourself be bullied into junk food. Let's see. Yeah, some of you might remember, this is about the dietary guidelines, the USDA's dietary guidelines. So I'll take you down memory lane for just a couple of minutes. In a very embarrassing 1967 report, images of skinny children with big bellies were televised into every US household. These were children in the United States. In the span of 1 week, innocent Americans learned that diseases thought to be the exclusive calamity of third world countries also plagued this land of plenty. The government was alarmed and responded by assigning a Senate committee to investigate the nation's hunger and malnutrition. You remember this. The group was led by George McGovern. The group focused its investigation on lack of food among vulnerable groups and on the gross maldistribution of nutritious foods, but was unprepared to discover that diseases of malnutrition were not limited to lack of food. In just a few decades after the World War II, a diet of excess fat and sugar has spawned an increasingly overweight population, which was dying of cancer, stroke, diabetes, and heart disease, by then already the #1 killer. Still today, heart disease, the #1 killer. The group issued then what were felt to be clear and much needed nutritional guidelines for consumers. And these are the 5 points. Increase carbohydrate intake by to 55 to 60% of the calories, and by that they meant grains, fruits, and vegetables. Number 2, decrease fat intake to no more than 30% of calories with less saturated fat, which meant less meat and dairy. Number 3, decrease cholesterol intake to 300 milligrams per day, which they stated meant less meat, eggs, and dairy products. Number 4, decrease sugar intake to 15% of calories, which meant less pastries and less processed or refined carbohydrates, and decrease salt intake to 3 grams a day. Those were the 5 recommendations.
And this was in 1967.
1967. While the public clearly stood to gain in nutrition and in health with this report, the words decrease or eat less did not sit well with the food industries. They mounted a strong defense-offense retaliation, which to this day has not lost steam. And sadly, none of the committee targets were met. Research teams today are hired to discredit disagreeable data, tout the benefits of their product, and popularize ditties with a scientific ring such as, milk, it does a body good. In Got Milk, even government figures are persuaded without pay to wear a white mustache for the dairy campaign. Mountains of marketing stand between consumers and the truth. Despite all hurdles, these early reports established a firm link between food and health. And with each passing year, the recommendations became clearer. A full 10 years after the first report, the committee did not mince words and issued dietary goals for the United States, exhorting people to eat more plants and less animals. This is 1977. As expected, tensions mounted again. And now, the food industry would have to buy not just for a place at the American table, but for the number of servings of their meat, eggs, milk, cheese, sugar, oils, and salt. The pendulum continues to swing back and forth. However, what began in the late 60s as the innocent investigation into hunger and malnutrition turned into a movement which sought to improve the nation's health on many fronts. The program of food stamps was established. Important legislation laid the ground for the National School Lunch Act and for the Child Nutrition Act. In an enduring legacy since 1980 and every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Agriculture jointly published a continually improving dietary guidelines for Americans. Having said that, and as laudable as this is, it's virtually impossible for these agencies to simultaneously support our health and the health of the food industry, or to do it consistently. Their conflicting recommendations are symptomatic of the compromising elements tied to subsidies and political favors. This is important for us to remember because this is a long history of tensions, and what is presented as these days as an advertisement might look like a recommendation, and vice versa. In 1999, having said that, yes, the conflicting recommendations are symptomatic of the compromising elements tied to subsidies and political favors. In 1999, the court ruled against the USDA for conflicts of interest and financial ties to various food industries in 6 of its 11 committee members, and for refusing to provide information involving a payment of over $10,000 to one of them. this is all for us to see. This is published, reports. The 2010 guidelines, the most recent as of this book's publishing date, are summarized in a rum plate and a drinking glass. You're familiar with that? Yeah. It's no longer the food pyramid, it's now the myplate.gov. A visual improvement over the former pyramids, because I never ate out of a pyramid. I usually eat out of a plate. The plate is divided into quadrants labeled vegetables, grains, fruits, and protein, without naming a source. Since we need only 10% of our calories from protein, and every plant, especially legumes, but also broccoli, cauliflower, rice, oats, are an adequate source of this macronutrient, protein, naming a quarter of the plate protein is code for meat, which for the first time in history is not considered a food group and won't go without a fight. So the 2010, it's for the first time that meat is not on the plate, but it still is protein. I go on and on to talk more about this, and if it's interesting to you, you can check it out. Let's see. So this, myplate.gov, I have my own plate, which is a little bit more instructional. And there's another one that's even more visually compelling. But we don't eat just colors, and we eat foods. And I think creating what are fruits, the part of the plant that has the seeds, and learning about the fact that we can really populate our plate with all kinds of fruits, not just sweet fruits, but savory fruits also, tomatoes and okras and peppers and avocados, they are fruit too. Have legumes, and really there's a bean for every letter of the alphabet, from A to, if you know a Z, show me, because I am stuck on the wing nuts is the last one. Grains, which are the seeds of grasses, we're talking about rice and quinoa and oats and corn and millet and wheat and amaranth. Amaranth, yes. And then a quarter, which is really the most abundant of our produce, which is the leafy greens, the roots, and the bulbs. So I don't really separate this in a solid line. It's really a dotted line, because these are all things that are grown in the ground. On the bottom left, I put what's optional, which is meat, chicken, fish, eggs, milk, cheese, and yogurt. They are the same food. It's just coming from a different named animal, but it's the same food. It's protein and fat. Zero carbohydrate, which is what we need for energy. And on the right lower corner, these are all the special interest groups. It's salt, oil, flour, and sugar, which is what makes all processed foods in the supermarket. It never fails that I'm asked wherever I am, whether I'm dressed as a physician or not, people ask me, what about carbohydrates? What about protein? What about fats? So I had to really write a little something about that. Are we well nourished? I call this chapter. From a point of reference cluttered with misinformation, this question may be impossible to answer. Let's look at some common food arguments which are riddled with inaccuracies. Carbohydrates. Thanks to fad diets and self-appointed gurus, we are persuaded to avoid carbs, which are in fact our source of energy. What we should avoid are sugars and flours, which are the primary ingredients in items such as soft drinks, water ice cream, candy, boxed cereals, bagged snacks, cookies, and pastries. These concentrated carbs deliver too many calories and not much else. They have been purified or stripped of everything from the mother plant, and they just give us carbohydrate and sugar, 100%. However, carbohydrate is the only thing that we need for energy. I just need it from the whole source. I want it from the whole plant, so that I also get not just carbohydrate, but I get fiber and water and antioxidants and vitamins and what we call phytochemicals, which is really like a dumb phrase because there are so many chemicals from phytos, from plants, that we don't know yet. So it's a whole big category. When I eat just flour and sugar, I have no chance of getting phytochemicals, carbohydrates, no fiber, or hardly any, no water, it's dehydrated. So I get nothing from the whole plant. And although if I was in prison or in the desert, you know, that would be fine, we're not there. Protein. Although a diet based on plants satisfies our protein needs, because we only need 10% of our calories from protein, and we're already made. I'm made of fat and protein already. Many coaches, trainers, or even health professionals insist that we must add protein to the diet, usually meaning meat. This idea belongs in the 19th century when protein, named proteus for primary, proteus, that was, you know, like proteus. That's where protein comes from, the 19th century, when protein was believed to be the basic unit of life. In truth, protein consists of smaller units called amino acids. These building blocks are shared by every plant and animal on the planet, and yet rearranged in countless different sequences, which explains why and how the body can take protein from plants such as beans, nuts, and rice, and make human protein such as muscle, skin, and hormones with myriad functions. Children eating enough calories are getting enough protein. We don't need meat protein to build muscle. What do we need? Exercise. So if you eat too much protein, your body breaks it down into amino acids, takes out the sulfur groups, the amino groups, makes urea, and that goes into the urine and out. It's flushed. So excess protein is wasted. What we need is exercise for muscle. Even an athlete who is training, all they need is enough carbohydrates to power their energy. Unless you are in a catastrophic accident or in the burn unit, you're not burning muscle, you're burning fat. Vitamins and minerals. Bones naturally make us think calcium, and the dairy industry pours billions of dollars to make calcium synonymous with milk. One of the most successful strategies consists of distributing biased educational materials to schools, physicians, and coaches who in turn disseminate the myth that milk, cheese, and yogurt are essential for strong bones. Tell that to the cow. There's no question that cow's milk is a source of calcium, but its role in a number of conditions such as acne, constipation, and cancer makes it an ill-advised food for humans of any age. Where does a cow get her calcium? Plants. Where does the elephant get his calcium for that big frame? The horse, the giraffe. So we need calcium. We don't need milk. If we needed milk, we would need human milk for the rest of our lives, not another species milk. So calcium, cow is has a high source of calcium, but milk is also associated with acne, is associated with constipation, and it is associated with some cancers. So it's really not a good food overall. Speaking of diseases then, I have a long section on sugar, but I won't sweeten this meeting with that. Sugar is sugar, whether molasses, maple syrup, agave, honey, brown sugar, they're all the same. 60 calories per tablespoon. So just use a small amount. The American Heart Association has issued their recommendations, 3 teaspoons for children, 6 for women, and 9 for men per day. Try to fit that in a soda or a soft drink. I'm sure you are, as many of us are, appalled at obesity in children. And we are really wondering, how come and where is this coming from? Well, it's not from lack of exercise. All throughout our history, there's been children who are not athletic, who are readers, writers. They play with toys, they play with superheroes. So they play music. So it's not from lack of exercise. It is from the food they eat. Today's foraging grounds tend to be fast food joints, delis, all-you-can-eat buffets, malls, and of course supermarkets where aisle upon aisle is stacked with packaged food. Too many people can spend their lifetime without knowing where the food comes from. Children growing up on fast food will hand down this ignorance to the next generation. Humans and edible plants separated by an abyss. Peddlers of fast food and sweet drinks have taught our children to like their products. Teenagers are lining the pockets of greed with their eating habits. Young people must know how the body uses food to grow, repair, and renew itself. Families need food literacy and body literacy. Children should understand how antioxidants protect cells from unhealthy mutations and how fiber and water help rid us of toxins. Many a chapter in this book will serve this demand. Children who develop curiosity and respect for the body will protect it. Children and adults must take off their blinders. Adults first. I mentioned to you that there are 20-some diseases that are prevalent in this country that are unheard of in others, and among them, I'll just mention some. I won't really read them, but acne, which is common in 50% of adolescents and adults in the United States, is unheard of in plant-eating cultures. Papua New Guinea, no acne. Diverticulitis, diabetes. We're exporting these diseases not because we're splicing genes on other people. We're exporting our way of eating. Constipation is rampant. So many people live constipated. That's because there is no fiber, water. 90% of plants is water, but it comes together with fiber. You cannot substitute fiber and water with just a bottle of water. You'll just pee it out. You need something to retain the water in your gut. So there is a little chapter on traveling the intestinal tract from the mouth all the way out. From this wall to where the bleachers start is about 20 feet, right? This is how long our small intestine is, coiled up in here. It's not just a tube to go from here to there. It's really a place where the interface between food and our bloodstream are in intimate contact, but separated by a layer of dynamic functional tissue. All the digestion inside the gut means that that food is still not inside our bodies. It's outside the bodies, in that tube. Only until it is totally digested, enzymatically destroyed and broken down is it allowed to enter the bloodstream. If there is inflammation in the gut because of arachidonic acid, inflammatory prostaglandins made from animal products, processed foods, radiation, medicines, everything that we put into our gut, that tissue that separates what's inside the stomach, inside the intestines, and our bloodstream starts to sort of break down. It's like a cloth that has little holes. And if you've heard of the term leaky gut, it doesn't leak out into the gut, it leaks into our bloodstream. That's what it means. So half-baked proteins, half-baked nutrients enter the bloodstream and are identified as foreign, and they trigger an immunological reaction that makes people feel sick, bloated, etc., etc. I need to really clarify. Most people think leaky gut, that it leaks out. It leaks in. That's where the problem lies. I'll just finish with a couple of case studies, or lessons from case studies. Is that right? I'll tell you two. One from a very young one and one very old. I saw A.B. for the first time when he was 5 years old. Short for his age, pale and thin. He walked in accompanied by his anguished mom, dad, and older sister. They confessed living in a constant fear of A.B.'s next asthma attack and the dreaded emergency room visits. The parents diligently administered the inhaler treatments, and everyone constantly reminded him not to run or exert himself. His school attendance was spotty in spite of compliance with the current treatment, and he looked at me with big eyes as I listened to the whistles and wheezes coming out of his chest. A review of his diet uncovered that he ate a pound of string cheese a week, all by himself. Now, some people produce a disproportionate amount of what's called leukotrienes from arachidonic acid in dairy and meat. Leukotrienes are potent bronchoconstrictors. In other words, they make the bronchi close up and spasm. And he was getting a lot of arachidonic acid from where to make this leukotrienes. So we discussed this, and his parents were so hopeful that they agreed to gladly eliminate cheese, not just for him, but for the entire household. See, now I knew that there was a chance for success, because the whole family was going to do it. A month later, I saw A.B. and his family again. This time, they were smiling. A.B.'s weight was catching up. His demeanor was curious. He had not missed school, and he beamed. As I listened with my stethoscope, he smiled, pointing to the center of his chest, and he said, "I don't hurt here anymore." He'd never told anybody that he hurt until he didn't hurt anymore. Many adult people walk into a jail of symptoms and discomforts without realizing they can walk out. The jail cell is wide open. How many people you know live with joint aches, with migraines, with acid reflux, with bloating, with all kinds of symptoms for which there is a pill? So we say they get used to it. The jail cell is open, and we just say, "No, I'd rather stay in here. Give me the pill." The last study I will read is this. For many years, Mom catered to Dad's limited taste. As a result, she too ate very poorly. At 86, her small frame was 30 pounds overweight. She felt fatigued, suffered with severe joint pains, had high blood pressure, and seemed unsteady in her feet. In fact, she had fallen several times that year. She felt achy all the time, could not make a fist, and slept very poorly. She began using a cane and was told she needed new knees. Then my father died. Very sad and without a firm grasp of her functional capacity, I invited her to come stay with me for a couple of weeks. She lived in Puerto Rico. From the moment she stepped in the house, she had no meat, cheese, or refined foods. She ate only plants, and lots of them. I watched her during the day recover lost sleep, taking long and frequent naps. She would just come up to eat. After 10 days of eating an abundance of plants, especially cruciferous, and walking up and down the house stairs, she announced she wanted to cook with me. She could make a tight fist, felt elastic, and marveled that she was sleeping through the night. This was in 10 days. She's still 86. That initial visit, which was meant to be a week, extended to a whole month, during which we walked uneven terrain, we went to a garden, I forget the name, a mile around, unsteady, uneven terrain. She walked it. She hiked with me blooming gardens and even paddled a canoe. She actually also wanted to get on a bicycle, and I said, my sisters will kill me. Let's not do that. She shed most of her extra weight and dropped 10 inches from her waist. 10 inches from her waist, enabling her to bend and tie her shoes. She forgot to use the cane around the house. Physically and emotionally, she was gaining life back. She said her only regret was not starting sooner. Of course, I told her so. Our long visits turned regular. Her whole plant menu grew, and we laughed on the phone as she confessed that she was adding more vegetables than the recipes called for. 3 years later, as she celebrated her 89th birthday, she was still cooking favorite and new dishes every day, proudly lecturing to family, friends, plumbers, and priests on everything she knew firsthand about the diet that restored her well-being. Of course, it was more than diet. It must have included a spark of life from within and invisible to the outside eye. Find yours. I'm so grateful to the people who, every time I thought, oh, this is not going to work, showed me that it did. And showed me that they could make the changes that many of my colleagues said, oh, people don't make those changes. They proved me wrong. They proved them wrong. And now it's not, oh my gosh, that's amazing. No, I said, that's expected. It's expected. Every time we change to a healthier eating, it really is expected that between 7 to 10 days, you get rid of so many symptoms. Of course, you accrue a lot of the benefits over time, 3 months, 6 months, a year. But the first ones are what really fuel the keep going. Men who have, on a follow-up visit on the phone, said, you didn't tell me this would happen, but I was using Viagra, and now I don't need it. Of course, blood circulation is important for sexual function, healthy sexual function. It's not circulation, really, because the penis gets blood in and out. It's that when the artery has the ability to dilate, it will collapse the vein and cause a tourniquet effect and an erection. If you have hardening of the arteries, there will not be that elasticity of the arteries, so the blood goes in and comes out, and the penis stays flaccid. Viagra and Cialis, what they do is they donate nitric oxide, which is the necessary gas that allows the arteries to dilate, similar to nitroglycerin, which is what does the same thing for the heart, right? So nitroglycerin, Viagra, Cialis, same thing. But we make nitric oxide in our arteries, in the lining of the arteries. From where? Plants. We chew nitrates, they become nitrites, and eventually, in a couple of, and the story is here because I'm so happy. I mean, the stories, this is not fiction, but it is.
Amazing
fiction.
story.
Yeah, they're amazing stories. So eventually the nitrates from the plants become, at the level of the artery, an enzyme, nitric oxide synthase, makes nitric oxide. It's a very short-lived, it's a gas. Not to be confused with nitrous oxide, which is the laughing gas of the dentist. This is nitric oxide. It's very short-lived, and it allows the blood vessels to dilate. That's why a sublingual nitroglycerin gets rid of chest pain immediately, right? That's why Viagra helps really quickly. But if you change your diet and eat more plants, you have a built-in nitric oxide factory.
Talk about a selling point, I mean. You know, right?
You would think, you would think.
I'm just saying.
All the men
Well,
turn into
motivates.
horticulturists, you know?
Hey, I just wish.
If you do it naturally, then you don't have to worry about the 4-hour erection.
Right?
That's right. Or, okay, this is really also, you know, I also put this down because I thought some people would like the story. If you use nitroglycerin and you use Viagra and you use, you know, and you eat too many plants, no, that's not good. Your blood pressure, the blood vessels dilate so that your blood pressure really drops. And that's what happens then is your brain, your eyes, your heart do not have enough pressure for normal circulation, you know, for the circulation. And this is how you have heard the reports of blindness or stroke using Viagra or using, you know, these sexually enhancing drugs. Yes, well, let me just end because I also have some sample foods that I'd like you to taste if you'd like.
Wow.
So you can just close your eyes for a minute. You virtually close your eyes. This is called My Human Body. As I walk, text, talk, read, play, write, cook, wash, sit, sleep, daydream, breathe, my body quietly lives. My body is an amazing organism in constant production, destruction, and repair. It is responsible for the function of my skins, muscles, bones, and nerves, renews white and red blood cells, hormones and enzymes, repairs scrapes, wounds, and the intestinal lining, looks after my brain, gushes with tears, mucus, gastric juices, and saliva, is constantly growing hair and nails, makes cholesterol, bile, urine, stool, and myriad chemicals. It tries to maintain a clutter-free internal environment. After digesting oats, cookies, broccoli, or fries, it eliminates leftover waste, clears medicine from my system, destroys cells that have gone berserk or no longer work as a team. It sweeps the inside of arteries so my blood can flow freely, directs vitamins, antioxidants, and phytochemicals to vital tissues everywhere, turns inflammation on, then off on demand. It is in constant communication with every part of itself, the feet with the hands, the thyroid with the pituitary, pancreas with the mitochondria. It interacts with space, temperature, and surroundings. It can tell hostility from compassion and competition from group effort. My body communicates with the whole organism and lets me know that I'm tired, stressed, or satisfied, that I'm awake, that I'm hungry, that I need to go pay bills, go to school, work, make dinner, or that I want to make love. This organism counts on the nourishment I give it to sustain its day-to-day precious balance. It houses my life. It houses myself for life. Thank you very much.